massive space station.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. A few things before we get started. We have a promo code for Hopewell Farm CBD if you guys are looking to try a new CBD. It's brilliant stuff. They have some amazing topical ointment and CBD oils. You can save 15% off all their products with promo code JTT. Thanks. That link is below in the description. And that sale goes through the new year, I believe. I think it ends on January 3rd or something like that. So if you're looking for some CBD, I would recommend that. And tickets are available for our conference. As you know, the early bird just ended, but there's plenty of tickets still available. It's not until May, but tickets are selling and the lodge itself is sold out, but you can get some on camping on site and Airbnbs and hotels in town, as you know if you've been there before. So um, take advantage of the availability while you can. And that link is below in the description as well, journeytotruth.online. And then today we are joined by our good friend Mark Sabas, who has been to our conferences before, actually, and he works
Yep.
with Sherry Div Band. Hey, there you go. He's wearing the
Yeah,
shirt. Uh,
representing.
that's from the second conference, yeah. And he works with Sherry Band with the children at Aramis Academy, I guess you would call it.
Yep.
And he just wrote his first book, his debut novel, The Monarchs, which is an award-winning book already. And I mean, the reviews alone, like if you've never read the book and you start reading the reviews, the reviews will blow your mind. I mean, your book is really, it's really gained some traction. And I haven't read through the whole thing yet. I'm in the process of reading it now. Um, for being your first book, you're a brilliant writer, by the way. It's very poetic and it flows, and it seemed like you've written a million books before, and I was very impressed to know that that's your first. Maybe you've written before behind the scenes, but um, and the story and the concept is absolutely, right up our alley. It's what we cover on the show, and we'll turn it over to you. I'll let you introduce yourself a little better, and then we can kind of get into the book and what inspired it, and then we'll go from there.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be on your show. I've been following you guys for quite a while now, and like you said, I've been to the actually the second and the third conferences, which was really fun. But yeah, I guess just a little bit about my background. I grew up mainly in a more scientifically minded family. My father was a well, he is a physicist. He's still alive. He is a physicist who, in the 1980s, worked for the Los Alamos National Labs in New Mexico. So that's pretty cool. There's a whole bunch of lore surrounding that area. And so I grew up mainly, yeah, in a scientific background. I wasn't really raised religious or anything. I did have a short stint in Sunday school, but it didn't really last long. But I have always kind of felt that there was something kind of off with the world we live in. I always kind of had this inner rebellion against the Matrix, as Charles Eisenstein likes to put it. By the time I was 14, I was already researching Roswell and the 9/11 conspiracy theories. Um, so yeah, I didn't get too deep down the rabbit hole then. But really, I guess once I turned 17 or 18, I got really into lucid dreaming as well as astral projection, which we could get into later. And I taught myself how to do it using the methods that were available at the time. And that led to sort of a my first spiritual awakening. Of course, spiritual awakening is a constant process, but that really led me to explore the potentialities of consciousness. What is reality? Are we really living in a cold, callous universe, or are we living in a conscious, alive, living universe with which we're intimately connected? And I started opening up my energy centers. I started receiving visions and telepathic downloads, as people like to call it. And I started seeing synchronicity everywhere as well, which is a good sign if you're on the path of awakening. So Initially, like I said, I grew up pretty left brain. I was studying computer science engineering, but I switched my major to a much less lucrative major of philosophy. So I really just wanted to study what is this world we're living in, and why do most people just seem to walk around in this world just not questioning why they're here, what happens when we die, if we even have a soul, what is consciousness? So all these questions I wanted to study. So I was especially interested in metaphysics, and I was also interested in the potentialities of consciousness. So if we are living in a living conscious universe, in which ways can we interact with this universe? Do we have influence over the quote unquote external world? So I also got into psi abilities. I was really interested and fascinated by remote viewing. That helped me to initially open up to the potentialities of consciousness. I was very interested in the Farsight Institute back when Dick Algeier and Dad Smith were remote viewers there. So that was back in the day. So all this kind of catapulted my awakening. And at the time, back, so when I was graduating from college, I should say that was 2014. Um, and also the concept of indigo children, that was really popular kind of when I was, in college. Um, Indigo children, this new wave of children that have seemingly supernormal abilities that our next stage, ostensibly in human evolution, that just fascinated me. And I was actually a member of a group back then called Indigo Society. I'm not sure if it's still active, but I was just very fascinated by the possibility that we're going through some sort of ascension process. If there is a new wave of children that are coming to the planet. I also read Dolores Cannon. So I was also very kind of, I wasn't sure if anyone else really, and I'm sure many people can relate, I wasn't sure if anyone else out there really thought like I did or was interested in this stuff like I did, or if I was just crazy. So I was kind of, I guess you could say, rebellious or even apathetic for getting a corporate job, which, of course, the familial pressures and societal pressures want you to just go down this assembly line lifestyle of getting a job and making money and all that. But I've always felt there was something more, as I was saying. So it was a like college spring break actually, and I was on a beach trip with a few of my good buddies. And I'm going to be honest, I had a psychedelic induced visionary experience. Plant medicine has also helped me along my journey. It's one of the many modalities that have helped me to awaken to spiritually. And yeah, I was at the beach and I had this visionary experience. And sort of the next day, getting into my book finally, the next morning, really, I just call it a download. I just had all these ideas for a novel. Now, I'm not, endorsing psychedelics or plant medicine per se, but they can help open you up
Hmm.
towards, I guess you could say, higher inspiration. So I had all these ideas for a book that's very much inspired by all the concepts I just talked about, psychic abilities, consciousness, and this new wave of children that are coming to the planet to help humanity to ascend. So
Right.
that's where we get into my book. So the idea actually came in 2014, uh, so 10 years ago, believe it or not. I was not writing it for 10 years. I outlined it back then and then put it on hold for several years until finally when the timing was right, maybe back 2019, 2020, I decided to write a book. And like you said, Tyler, yeah, it's my my first time writing a book. It's very difficult if you don't know the publishing process to really sit down and write a coherent novel, which was a learning process in itself. But thankfully, I ended up doing it, and it's finally published uh, back in June through a small publisher, Kohler Books, in Virginia Beach, and I'm very thankful for that. And it was a long journey. So to explain about my novel, it is about um, they don't call it indigo children in the novel. We call it new youth. So it's about this wave of new youth children with born with these abnormally large eyes and extraordinary psychic abilities. So Samuel Helen is the protagonist of the novel. He's 17 years old, and he is among the first in this wave of new youth children, and he is being tested at this military facility. But he has experienced a very traumatic past. I don't want to give everything away. Ultimately, throughout the novel, it's revealed what actually went on in his past. And he has to overcome, he's sort of repressed his abilities. He has to overcome his trauma and heal from his trauma in order to fully activate his potential. So there's this wave of new youth being tested at, in the book, it's just called the facility. Many the book is called The Monarchs. Many people who are familiar with sort of my labs and Monarch programming, uh, they might find similarities between some of the testimonies of what occurs there and what is described with these kids being tested at this facility. Even though when I received the idea for this book, I had no idea about any of that.
Right.
But um, ultimately, it does not just take place at the military facility. There's a group of radicalized, black-robed new youth children who attack the facility, and without giving too much away, they this uh, starts off a whole hero's journey with Samuel and his love interest, Evelyn, making a run for it. So they escape into the forest, and Evelyn ends up uh, getting into a coma. She becomes comatose, and they meet this brilliant yet very eccentric, powerful new youth, Luna, who guides them along a spiritual odyssey per se towards this fabled sanctuary where Evelyn could be healed. So the book is very much a hero's journey. Samuel has to overcome his past, has to uh, really awaken spiritually, because ultimately the main theme in the whole book can be uh, sort of a whole analogy for spiritual awakening, as Samuel uh, awakens to the fact that we're living in a conscious universe, and uh, awakens to the unified field of consciousness that connects everyone and everything. Then he gradually learns to control his abilities. So anyway, I've been
Yeah.
going on for quite some
So,
time, but there's many interesting themes that we could
right.
get more
Yeah.
into.
So let's do that. Let's talk about the reality of the theme of your book. I mean, what you
Yeah,
described really happens, and it really happens. There are
yes,
military scientists and underground facilities, and black budget and the private sector and all that stuff that outside of the military industrial complex and within it, that is essentially tracking and recruiting gifted starseeds into these programs and testing their abilities and seeing how they can be used and
yes.
Stranger Things. Obviously, we've all seen Stranger Things. Um, so what is your experience like? So you said you weren't aware of any of that stuff when you got the idea, but then obviously I'm sure you went down those rabbit holes. And how many, how much of the book do you think is based in truth? In
Yeah,
your,
well, that's
yeah,
yeah, that's kind of a good question and sort of a loaded question. There are people I've talked to in this community, prominent people, so I who seem to think that this is some sort of subconscious recall,
that's what I
because the
thought.
whole the
I was
whole
like, is
book.
Is this
Yeah.
about you? You know?
Yeah, because the whole book, the whole outline for the book was downloaded back in 2014 before I was even consciously aware of kind of what they were doing in these programs. There are some people who claim that they sort of remember me, but I'm not gonna get too deeply into that because I have really no proof of whether how much this is based on my own reality, but I know that this is based on reality, that they do target these gifted kids, sort of like in Stranger Things, which is in itself is based off the Montauk Project. And in the book, they want to weaponize the children uh, and bring out, their abilities, but they also want to control the children. So there's many interesting themes in this book. Uh, Samuel has a wise tutor named Walter, I should say that, and he discusses with Samuel many interesting metaphysical topics. I wanted to load this book with real spiritual wisdom. So I wanted it to be my intention with the novel was for it to be a very, very entertaining, action-packed novel, fiction novel, which I hope it is entertaining, but also to load it with much therapeutic spirit and spiritual wisdom at the same time that could help to awaken people. So some of the themes that are talked about in the book include free will and predestination versus predestination. The existence of God is discussed. Planetary ascension. Ultimately, this book gets into not only spiritual awakening, but also sort of a planetary ascension. And also, it takes place on an alternate timeline.
Yeah.
So, um, in which the world went through a catastrophic war and in the midst of this nuclear war, there was this new children. I think that's important to mention, but I should emphasize it's only a timeline. And that will become clearer in books 2 and 3 because this is planning to be I'm planning for it to be a trilogy that's going to play with time itself. So time is a very big theme in the novel. Music is a very big theme in the novel for all you music fans. I mean, who
Yeah.
isn't a music fan?
Well,
But yeah, actually, Walter, the tutor, who I was talking about, he is named after Walter Russell, who kind of popped up into the collective consciousness more recently after the what's his
Terrence
name?
Howard. Terrence
Yeah,
Howard.
yeah,
yeah,
Terrence
the
Howard. Yeah, the interview on Joe
periodic
Rogan.
table. Yeah.
Yeah, and he believed that all elements on the periodic table had a sort of certain frequency to them. And he was known to believe in a sort of musical universe. So Walter in the book, as well as Samuel's tutor, he believes in this musical universe or the theory that all things can be expressed through frequency, sound, geometry, and vibration. If you look at cymatics, where they vibrate a certain tone in sand particles and it produces this incredible geometry. There's a lot to find there.
Yep.
But to complement this musical theme, I did include several real references to actual songs by prominent musical artists such as the Beatles, Fleetwood Mac, etc. And I think it adds depth to the book. And there's also hidden messages that are kind of encoded in the music uh, that readers or can decipher if they decipher the
Sure.
lyrics correctly. And there's many songs that are explicitly referenced and songs that are sort of hidden in the dialogue. So I included many sort of Easter eggs and symbolism in the book. The book is loaded with synchronicity, which is another theme. Um, the Fibonacci sequence as well. There's certain parts that are secretly encoded with the Fibonacci sequence before it's explicitly referenced later in the book.
So
So the music, sorry.
yeah,
Go
yes,
ahead, Tyler.
I
Yeah.
there's so many things you're saying here, and it's blowing my mind because what I'm hearing you say is this book, there's like so many multi-dimensional layers to this book that like helps one transcend time while they're reading it. Like, and can you
Yes.
explain a little more what you mean by how you plan on the trilogy and playing with time? Because that
Yes. Well,
I actually got chills when you said that, and I'm like, yes, let's go there.
yeah. So that's a great question, Tyler. And transcend time, that is sort of the main theme of the book. And transcend time, not only transcending time, but transcending the time-based egoic self, the character, the small character. So as Samuel learns to transcend his ego, he transcend the character, he sort of develops this meta-awareness in which he recognizes that he's one with everyone and everything in the novel. And it's sort of an analogy, right, in which we are all dream characters in a greater mind, the mind of God or the universal mind. So it's I sort of wanted to analogize that, if that's a word, in this book with the author consciousness being God consciousness, and Samuel ultimately, as he has a spiritual awakening, he transcends his ego or his character. He breaks out of character and he breaks out of time. But to answer your question about the trilogy, yes, it's going to play with time in a way in which it'll sort of go back and forth. I don't have books two and three entirely outlined yet, but I have an idea. If you read, if I'm not going to give away the ending of book one, but there is going to be a sort of technological aspect that allows Samuel to go back and forth in time, and also in books two and three are going to further explore more mind-bending things such as ET life specifically. Book two is going to be like straight disclosure. I'm planning for that to
That's
happen,
Amazing.
but also other reincarnational cells, other timelines. So it's gonna go it's gonna deal with time travel, like literally time travel. And that's what I'm
yes.
planning for it to be.
So
And sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm sorry, because I'm getting excited about it. This is the second time I got chills because I feel there's an energy behind what you're saying right now. And like there's a frequency that, I mean, you're bringing to the earth. I feel like this isn't just a novel. This is something that like is going to decode and break down the matrix. And I
Mhm.
think it's going to help people do that. And I got a vision like you probably already got this vision and probably already had people tell you this, but like I see this as a movie or a series like
Uh,
Harry, like how Harry Potter was. You know what I'm saying? Like it was just turned into something. I feel that, and whether or not that's your primary goal, I don't know. But I want to give Aaron a chance to chime in on this because this is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, second everything Tyler said. Um, I I still have to read it, full disclosure. I
don't
started
worry, Aaron.
reading.
I, I
I bought
I
it.
still have to read your book. It's sitting on my
Oh,
nightstand.
oh, thank you. So there you go. We're on the
Yeah,
we're even.
And Tyler,
Uh,
write your book for goodness
I
sake.
am. It's in the.
Tyler needs to finish his and get
It
it out.
is very.
Yes.
It's in the process and close. It's close. But go ahead, Aaron.
I bought it a few months ago and I started reading it at one point and then life gets busy and then but now after this I'm like I'm with Tyler. I'm getting excited about it now. Now I'm like I'm gonna go
Right.
read it right after this.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
It sounds amazing and I can't wait to read it and yeah, man, it's awesome. I love that you wrote a fictional, novel that is actually real stuff because it's like it's a good way to like Trojan horse this stuff out there because if you write a book like mine, it's great, but like a lot of people aren't gonna read my book because they're gonna be like, oh, I don't this stuff sounds crazy or whatever, or I'm
Right.
not into this stuff or whatever. But your book is like they can read it as a fiction book, and that's also why I like the Sands of Time books that Sean David Morton wrote because he even says at the beginning, yeah, you can read this as a fun fiction book, and that's great. But just know everything in this book and these books are true, are real.
Right.
And that's kind of how your book is. It sounds like as well, and it's a great way to like have disclosure, just like they do in the movies and the shows, where it's like they're putting out so much truth in plain sight, and people
Mhm.
just think it's a fun movie or a fun show. People just read,
Well,
can read your book, but it's still planting those seeds so that when disclosure starts happening, it's like, oh
Exactly.
yeah, I read about that. Like it starts planting the seeds or getting people interested in this stuff, or even at a subconscious or spiritual level.
Yeah.
So thank you for writing these
Yeah,
books.
thanks, Aaron. Yeah, and to go off your points, yeah, Tyler, my goal is to uh and I purposely made it like cinematic and there's a love story too. There's a whole bunch of action, but like you were saying, Aaron, yeah, I want to plant seeds of implanting, spiritual wisdom, therapeutic wisdom to truly help people as well as it being an entertaining novel. But it is my goal to ultimately make it for it to ultimately be a come to life because
it will.
that's how you truly change public consciousness. And funny you say that because I entered this into a screencraft competition where they accept novels and they're judged by industry analysts on their potential to become a TV show or a movie. And the winner like gets a meeting with like this agent and all that. But I just received my initial feedback, and it's actually posted on my site. People could go read it. But the initial feedback was that it has immense potential to be adopted for TV series or a movie. So that is
That's
how
amazing.
we truly change. I mean, I want that to happen in order for to truly change, affect consciousness in a big way. Because
Right.
I'm sure we all
Yeah,
feel like we have a greater purpose here, and I felt like this is part of my purpose. I didn't question too much when it came to me, all the doubt in my mind was like, you've never written a book. Like, what are you doing? Just I've had people tell me, hey, show your first draft, which is very sloppily written to people in the industry. If they don't think it's up to par, then throw it away. You won't make money writing a book. Well, all I listened to was that inner voice, the inner excitement telling me to do this regardless of any outcomes or expectations. So for anyone listening, just follow that inner voice, follow that inner excitement, and it might lead you places that you have no way of knowing or seeing at the time. But yeah, it's an interesting process to get published, and it
Yeah.
was actually delayed, funnily enough. Getting it, trying to get an agent and get published. It's a whole process in itself, but it was actually delayed, funnily enough, because I was kind of naive. Because as I mentioned before, there's several music references in my book, and my editor was like, "Hey, you might want to." Get permission for these. So that was a whole journey in itself to get print license permissions for 24 different songs to be included. Only one major song like was rejected, but I ended up replacing it last minute. And I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. The small team I worked with, and I've submitted it to many reviewers and awards programs to great success so far. And actually, just last week, it was these 2025 American Writing Awards. It was announced as the winner in the category of new age fiction for the 2024 American Writing Awards. And just like a couple weeks ago, there was another, uh, the international, Independent Authors Network 2024 awards. It was the runner-up for best spiritual fiction, and it's won other awards too. And it has pretty good reviews, if I might say so. So I don't
It
want to
does.
like
It,
gloat, but
no, it
people could
does. I've
look
seen
at
them.
my website. Yeah, nothingtodoubt.org. I have it all
so
listed there, or they could just do a Google search if they're interested in reading more about it.
say
Yeah.
the website one more time.
Yeah, I have a website that I've had for a while. It was like a personal blog back in the day. Now it doubles as my book website. It's called nothingtodoubt.org.
Okay. So that's
Yeah.
where people should go. Okay.
Well,
So
congrats on all this
yeah,
success for your book, man. You deserve it, and there's a reason you've gotten so much acclaim for it. I'm sure it
yeah,
sounds phenomenal. So I can't wait to read it. Congrats,
yeah,
man. Amazing.
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you.
And okay, so
Yes.
let's go back to the time travel part of it. So
Yeah.
I love that you're incorporating that into it because I really do believe in my soul after, especially after
Mhm.
reading The Sands of Times. we're dealing with right now on the global scale is a temporal war. And we have been for a long time. And there's time travel involved, time travel technology that's been developed out in these, clandestine programs and stuff, that things that aren't supposed to exist not only exist, but have been mastered and perfected and are being used by people within our military industrial complex. And a lot of what we see playing out on the surface right now is a result of this temporal war. And nothing really makes sense to us because we're trying to fit it into this box that we've been told is our reality, right? But our reality is so flexible and it's so
Yes.
temporal, right? And it's just nothing, it's not at all what we believe it is. So the reality of the situation, even in the political arena, is that, some of the people, some of, if not a lot of the people that we see on TV with celebrities, musicians, and politicians are potentially time travelers, potentially extraterrestrials. I mean, we're talking about something that's so far beyond comprehension, but I do believe that is the case. And bringing time travel into the equation and bringing that to into the conversation moving forward in the coming years is going to help make sense of our reality, I think.
Oh yeah. I mean, I totally agree. One of the best things that I was taught in college, I'm still, paying off my loan, and I also studied economics. I don't use one thing from that. I do have a corporate job now, a day job, but I don't use one thing that I learned from my economics degree. But from my philosophy degree, one of the best things that I've learned was to study Socrates and to study Socratic wisdom and Socratic humility, which begins with admitting to yourself, the ancient Greek phrase, know thyself. Well, first part of knowing thyself is admitting that you know nothing, that we're born into this world with sort of amnesia, and we really don't know about anything that we're born into. For all we know, there could be, interdimensional entities or ETs pulling the strings behind the scenes of politicians, and as crazy as that sounds, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's important to question everything, and we do truly believe live in a yeah, the time and space is malleable.
Valuable. Yeah.
So we're not living in this fixed, time space bubble where, there's this cold thing, detached thing called and space out there, and we're just happen to be accidentally born into it. No, we're intimately intertwined with this larger field of consciousness. Some people call it the quantum field, which interconnects all things. And our consciousness is itself, there's a part of our consciousness that's above space and time. So not only entwined with all of space and all of time, there's also a part of consciousness that is, connected to
Yeah.
source or God that's above space and time itself. And, that we could get into quantum physics. One of my missions I feel here is try to merge science and spirituality, because I've always been more left brain growing up and very interested in physics, in science and math. But going through the spiritual awakening, it really helped me to see kind of the parallels between ancient mysticism and current quantum theory, like many of the great quantum physics physicists actually talked about, such as John Wheeler, who did these many experiments in retro causality, like influencing an event in the past. Like that's really talked about in quantum physics. So we're scientifically even we're living in this reality that's way more strange and beautiful and magnificent than we've been taught in school, and we are intertwined with this reality. We're deeply connected with this reality. And that's what's really exciting, because we don't need to go through a physical space-time portal to access the deepest dimensions of space and time. We have portals within ourselves, within our consciousness, within our heart space. And that gets into like remote viewing and other stuff, in which we can access within ourselves the past and the future. And we're living in a very tiny frequency band, very tiny bandwidth right now of our conscious mind. But if we expand that bandwidth just a little bit, you start having more access to our multidimensional awareness and understanding that there are aspects of ourselves that exist concurrently, simultaneously, that might be on different timelines, might be on different planets, uh, and that but are existing right now in this moment, because ultimately now is all there ever is, but now contains everything. So the universe isn't just stretched out over this abstraction we call space and time. The universe exists now and is constantly creating and recreating itself in the now moment.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah,
So
beautiful.
yeah,
You just
Yeah,
laid it all out, man.
amazing.
Yeah,
thanks.
I understand now why you're teaching children for Sherry and working with kids. You
Yeah.
definitely are the right person to be doing that, and we'll get into that. We'll get into that for sure. I love that you bring quantum physics into the conversation. I mean, you know, this is time travel and physics and all this stuff is something that I'm very ignorant. I don't know much about it, but I'm absolutely fascinated by it. So I try to learn. And I think a version of me on one of these other timelines is heavily involved in it, and that's why I have such a connection. And when I read books and stuff about it, I'm like, I get frustrated because I feel like I know things, but I can't reach it, you know? I'm like, this is somewhere in here, but I can't reach it. And I just got lost in time right now. I forgot where I was going with that. But
Yeah.
uh but I definitely think that we can connect to those other versions of ourselves and like bring that information here. And I think that's what you're doing right now. I really do believe like there is a version like you're tapping into those other versions of you and bringing this information now to put in your novel to help these kids and everything. Do you feel like that's what's happening?
Yes, 100%. When I first got the download from my novel, I felt like I was, tapping into a future version of myself, and I knew that this would happen. I just didn't know how. So I think when we follow that excitement, that inner passion, that inner voice, where does that come from? Well, I think that comes from our higher self that is urging us to take action in a specific direction using excitement as its calling card. So in the higher self, in the law of one kind of system, the higher self is, the sixth density version of ourselves that have evolved beyond space and time and is sent back in times in a way in order to help guide us in this current life. Um, so, I'm open to really all possibilities at this point because I know that there's so little that we actually know, and I do feel the influence of my higher self and other influences who are constantly guiding me. Even on a day-to-day basis, it's important to listen uh, to that inner voice, the right voice, because there's also the wrong voice that could get in sometimes. But it's important to really quiet the ego, constant chattering ego mind. It's constantly telling you basically lies about yourself, and listen to stillness, listen to silence, listen to that whisper of your heart over the chatter of your mind. And the whisper of your heart comes from that place that's beyond space and time, comes from your higher self. That's again urging you to uh, take action in a specific direction, that's gently nudging you in a specific direction. And you could just feel that voice. And there's many other ways that I've received communication from my higher self, be it visions, even like telepathic downloads. Synchronicity is another way in which your higher self or your guides could guide you. Because again, time and space are very malleable, and synchronicity in itself, it was, speaking of quantum physics, it was coined by Carl Jung and Wolfgang Pauli, who is a quantum Nobel Prize winning quantum physicist, and they were talking about synchronicity as a way to help awaken uh, people to the fact that there is this underlying psyche to the universe, and it's speaking to you, God, if you want to call it, or universal consciousness. There's a way to develop this personal relationship with the universe, and have that guide you instead of the ego mind, the conscious mind, which cannot see, which is very trapped in this limited um, prison of space and time, there's another other aspects of ourselves that are can see much broader, have a much broader vantage point, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Right.
And it's important to listen to that voice, and
Yep.
it will guide you to where you are destined to be.
Are you
Yeah,
beautifully
Absolutely.
said? I mean, you're like a walking galactic encyclopedia. Um, do you
thank you.
are you familiar with, I think Alan Watts? Do you know who that is? A quantum physicist? You know who I'm talking about, Aaron?
Yo,
Uh,
oh yeah. Love
yeah.
Alan
So,
Watts.
yeah. So one of my favorite things that he says, and he's a brilliant mind. He says that he's always willing to be wrong because he said all physics are based on an assumed truth to begin with.
Yes,
So,
Yeah, that's true.
and that's something we don't really consider most of the time. And the truth is assumed because we don't know any better at this current level of awareness, right? So we base all of our models and theories and equations off of our current perspective of reality.
yes,
And I think that's not, we don't consider that. So when people are like arguing with you about what is possible when it comes to physics and, speed of light and whatever it is, um, it's nothing you can actually argue about because at the end of the day, we really don't know because we just started with our best guess. That's what we
Mhm.
started with the best guess is what happened. And Aaron, you look like you were going to say something.
I was just saying there's actually and there's physical proof that you can break the laws of physics. There's yogis and masters for thousands of years that have been doing it because they've cultivated such a strong belief in knowing that they can do something that they end up being able to do it.
Right.
It's really it comes down to that. It's that simple,
Yeah.
like you just said.
Yeah.
Our belief is what creates our reality
And
ultimately.
exactly.
and
Yes,
a fact, and this is something people don't think about. What are the facts, right? Well, how did something become a fact? A fact was once a theory that enough people agreed upon to make it become a fact, right? So it's just a
Right.
yeah,
theory that enough people agreed on. And
yes,
that's what even makes up a fact. So, we have to go back to the drawing board, just a clean
yeah.
slate. Yeah,
Throw away all that.
right,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a psyop at this point. They want us to believe that the whole universe, all matter and space and time and energy just popped into existence from absolutely nothing, and from this miracle of this singularity of dead matter, and from that arose, single-celled organisms and lizards and monkeys and humans with consciousness. But really, like, what is consciousness? Consciousness is the movie that we're each taking part in right now. It's the only thing that we could truly know.
yeah,
And modern, traditional Newtonian physics assumes that consciousness is just an accidental byproduct of the brain. Some people have even called it like this illusion, but in reality, consciousness, in my opinion, it's really all there is, or behind all there is. Um, so we really have to change our worldview. We have to radically shift our ontology to, you know, we have to put consciousness primary behind space and time and matter, or else, you know, uh, quantum physics won't even make sense. There's so many experiments and uh, kind of anomalies in quantum physics that defy the traditional materialist worldview of the classical Newtonian physics. It just straight up defies it.
right,
And never mind, like going into psi phenomenon, psychic abilities, that also defies it. And it assumes this, again, this underlying field of consciousness that connects, everything. And, that's how I got into remote viewing. That's how I got into psi abilities. If we do have psi abilities, which we do by experience, then there must be this, our consciousness must not just be in here. We're part of a much greater entity, a much, greater soul entity, uh, and we're not, the observer is not detached from this world. We're intimately a part in actively creating
yeah,
this world, manifesting what we see, our perceptions. And this is what quantum physicists actually talk about. For example, John Wheeler, who coined the term black hole, quantum physicist at Princeton, and he uh, talked about this participatory universe where we're constantly participating and the actual creation of the universe, irrespective of time. So, and there's many other, almost all the pioneers of quantum physics, Schrodinger, um, Heisenberg, uh, Wigner, they were all uh, interested in mysticism, and Planck too. They all assumed that consciousness is fundamental to the universe, not
Right.
just an accidental byproduct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
like you said earlier, bridging the science and spirituality, I mean, together, bridging them is the key.
Yeah.
And was just at the Star Knowledge Conference in November, and it was beautiful because these Native American elders that was the underlying theme. They're like, finally these people, these scientists are catching up with the Native American knowledge, the star
Yes.
knowledge. They're like
Right.
finally catching up. They're starting to see like glimpses of it online now. And they're like, we've known this all along, but nobody listens to us. And
Oh yeah.
and it's just, and going back to the Nazis and the Germans and the Hanabus and the Vril Society and everything, that was very much, they couldn't have built those UFOs without bringing in the channelers and them, channeling
Mhm.
information and the spiritual aspect of what is even possible. Um, that is how they accomplished what they did with those flying saucers.
Occult knowledge. I mean, the
Yeah.
Nazi symbol swastika is a literal ancient spiritual symbol, essentially.
Right.
They were very, very into occult knowledge, but they were very service to self
Yeah.
oriented beings. So they wanted it for power and control rather than service to others
Hmm.
and for the good of all,
Yeah,
right? So just because
exactly.
you have a lot of knowledge does not mean you are oriented in a good way or a service to others
Right.
way.
Yeah.
But at a certain level of density or ascension, you could say it becomes impossible to be service to others. So the service to self is very limited, but it does serve a purpose, is just why it exists. I don't think anything in this universe can exist unless it serves a purpose, because I believe we are in that much of an intentional divine universe.
Right, right. So
Yeah.
I know you've been talking about, psi abilities, psionic abilities, and remote viewing, and you've trained with Farsight Institute, and
Mhm.
you're involved with Tony Rodriguez' remote viewing program. Um, we can get into what remote viewing is, but I think you already covered that, and what it allows you to tap into. But I'm more curious to know why why you decided you want to remote view because. Um, some people get into remote viewing for the wrong reasons. Like
Mhm.
they want to just like have this magic power and like see, but there's so much more to it than that. And I'm just curious to know what your driving factor was into like teaching yourself how to do that.
Yeah, great question. So, there's one thing to talk about how everything's connected by a unified field of consciousness, and, we could transcend time and space. There's another thing entirely to actively demonstrate that, and personally demonstrate it to yourself. So I was kind of driven by that just to confirm that yes, it is indeed real. And I've been interested in remote viewing for a long time. Like I said, I was watching Dick Algeier and Das Smith remote view for Farsight many years ago, and they were doing all this crazy stuff like remote viewing the ancient pyramids and remote viewing other planets. I'm like, oh my God, and with perfect accuracy. So I was really interested in, eventually, actually, it wasn't until uh, over a year ago, so really kind of recently, that I'm like, I need to, like maybe 1 or 2 years ago, like I need to actually learn for myself. Like I can't just, you know, sit and watch. Um, these people without trying to learn myself, because it's just so interesting. So I was trained by an instructor at Farsight Institute in the Voyager program. It's our most basic program, but it's still pretty intensive. 10 hours of private instruction plus a test afterwards where they email you a number, just a number, an 8-digit number, not telling you anything else. And then you have to pass the program, you have to just use that number and sit and do a solo session, uh, with nothing else, and guess, or not guess, sorry, but perceive the main aspects of the target. Because it's not guessing, it's literally perceiving, because a part of you is actually there when you the whole process on a blind target is basically creating an ideogram, if you know about remote viewing, and then
Mhm.
probing the ideogram for non-local perceptions. And the reason why it's so important uh, for it to be blind is for the conscious ego mind and the imagination not to step in and try to guess and get in the way. That's called being front-loaded if you know the target ahead of time. But I'm not really knocking on people who do remote viewing front loaded. It is very possible to do remote viewing front loaded, but you have to be an experienced psychic to be able to distinguish what is comes from your uh, super conscious and what comes from your conscious mind, what comes from imagination, and what comes from that transcendent aspect of you that is above space and time. So it's all about making that distinction with remote viewing. But remote viewing in itself, I should say, is kind of a misnomer because it's really about remote feeling. When you probe the ideogram with your pen, there's a part of you that's actually there, and you could feel, you could hear. Um, I was taught even use my heart space area to really just feel what's there, listen to what's there. Just so you could even pick up on smells, use all your senses. And when I was training with the Farsight instructor, Inti Sam, Yamei Shanae, she's the one who
Yep.
who graded my test, but I didn't train with her. I trained with Inti Sam, great instructor if anyone's interested. And we were doing a blind target, and I felt myself just by the end of the target, this whole process, but I felt myself accelerating upward and I'm hearing, this roar of this engine, this propulsion, and I even like hear like a voice over the intercom, and I thought I heard like ready to lift off and everything. And
Hmm.
and the target reveal was NASA spaceship launch, and just like that
Wow.
really like blew my mind. And so it could really be incredible. Just it's so exciting. And
Yep.
yeah, I am part of Tony's group week after a week now, and it's just so exciting when you get hits on a blind target that you couldn't have known otherwise. It's
Right.
one of the funnest things. It
So
could also be scary, by the way. Just one other anecdote. Sorry, just one other tidbit. I there was one session I was thinking about as well where I saw myself in this. I literally got a vision as if I was there during the session, and I was in this plane, but I felt this turbulence, and the plane was like going. I thought it was going down. I ended up questioning that. I'm like, was that just my imagination, like lights blinking, turbulence? And then the target reveal was this memorial at this airport, and the memorial was dedicated to this French plane that unfortunately crashed. So
hmm.
that would,
Yeah.
if it's not a good target, you got to be careful because again, a part of you is actually there, and you pick up on the emotions. I do like it when Tony sends us to Hawaii. It's kind of like a vacation, but
Right.
other times, which that's been an actual target, but other
Right.
times it could be it's very mind
Y-
blowing. Yeah.
So were you part of did you participate last week?
No, I've been traveling so much recently.
Okay.
I haven't been in as much group meetings.
So the
The last, sorry, go
I
ahead.
was just going to say the target last week was actually an object that belonged to my dad. And
Oh, really?
Really?
yeah, yeah. And I guess I won't matter if I reveal it now, but my dad, when he carries his own like Celtic salt and cayenne pepper, his own spices with him, like when he goes to
Hmm.
restaurants and stuff. And Tony thought it was so funny that he had a spice bag and he was calling him like Spice Man and Spice Runner and all this stuff the whole trip when we were in South Dakota. And then at the end of the trip, Tony's like, I'm gonna make your bag the remote viewing target next week. And he did.
That's
So
awesome.
the remote viewing target this past week was actually my dad's spice bag. And
That's
I
so
don't even
funny.
know what the results were from the group. I'd love to see, but
Yeah. But another thing I wanted to point out is that another answer to your question is I wanted to also find out stuff. Remote viewing is great, especially if you're part of a group to want to find out stuff. For example, I was visiting Mexico a few years ago, and we went to these pyramids at Teotihuacan. For those who don't know, main pyramid there, it's the same base as the Great Pyramid of Egypt. These things are huge.
Hmm.
What's even more compelling is that they have no idea really about who built those pyramids. It was inhabited by the Aztecs, and that's where it got its name. But this goes into Graham Hancock territory. The original builders of Teotihuacan were much older, and they barely know anything about who actually built those pyramids. So I said, if it's fun to be a targeter as well, because one of the things I had my turn being a targeter for Tony's group, and I set an intention. You could also ask questions and set an intention. I set an intention to take the viewers to, and again, this is a blind target, to Teotihuacan as it was being built. And my question was, how were they built? And like this blew my mind because like viewer after viewer, like 3 or 4 viewers, they were talking about this incredible energy and this vibration and this technology, and literally they were talking about these stones being levitated. And again, this is a blind target; they have no idea, and they were talking about this energy, this vibration, and the stones like
Hmm.
levitating, and
Yeah.
that was just
Yeah.
So was there like this technology that helped to levitate the stones? Well,
Of
it's very
course.
compelling.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of course. There's acoustic technologies for sure. So
yeah.
you mentioned prior to us going on air that you recently had some messages from human-looking ETs, you and a close friend of yours, and you wanted to share these messages because you believe that they're relevant to our times. So would you mind sharing what that is and what that experience was?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, there's many experiences I like to share. Just to tie up remote viewing. Yeah, you did mention I work for the Aramis Center. Sometimes I do, like every other month, I do um, teach a remote viewing class to adults. So if anyone's interested in the classes we teach for the Aramis Center, you could go to aramiscreativelearning.com, and I've taught a few remote viewing classes. B- but I don't teach the Farsight methodology. I just teach a very simple methodology. I'd recommend Farsight if you want to learn the extensive methodology. But yeah, going back to your question. Um, so I've gradually through modalities such as meditation, qigong, plant medicine, gradually became to open myself, open that band of frequency to perceive more of what's actually there. And I taught myself how to lucid dream. And also I was interested in astral projection, which is similar, not quite the same, but similar. It's kind of
Hmm.
it could be, a difference of semantics, but uh back when I was like in college, like first starting college was when it first started, so 18 years old. I was interested in Bob Monroe and his whole um techniques for getting out of body, like the rollout method where it literally feels like you're rolling out of your body. Like, yeah, that's real. And through that, I've experienced some pretty cool things, just flying out and going to these astral planes. Um, and yeah, so that was really cool. So I was going somewhere with this. Let me catch my train of thought. So I've experienced many cool things through those modalities and experienced run-ins with entities. So on the astral plane, you could run in with anything that from the lower astral planes to the higher astral planes. I think you could experience anything from uh, thought form projections up to what seem to be autonomous entities, in angelics and some scary looking stuff I've seen. Yeah, I've definitely seen that. And I've wanted, but anyway, recently, like a few, well, this really started a few years ago. So I've had many experiences and sort of, t telepathy as well. I've experienced, so it's not new for me, but I do have a few things written that I wanted to share. So a few years ago, back when um, the UFO disclosures were first coming out with, the Navy and all that. So it was around that time. So there was, woke up and I was sort of, uh, I would say in a sleep paralysis type state, which is related to sort of, through sleep paralysis, it said you could venture out of your body, go on these astral journeys. But really, I think sleep paralysis is a side effect of attuning to another dimension. And I felt this energy, this intense energy by my bedside, like almost like this entity, and it was telepathically talking to me. And just the energy was pretty incredible. And I just got a message. The truth is that it's not nonsense. So, and then I snapped out of it. And then I'm like, whoa, that was weird. Like, what is it talking about? Like, not nonsense. So, I, in the morning, I get my phone. I think I'm still in bed. And the first video that I see on YouTube, it's sort of a synchronicity. The first video is this third phase of the moon video with Dr. Michael Salla, where he's talking about the Navy disclosures. And so I click on it, something tells me to click on it, I click on it, and he ends it with saying this is going to be a seismic shift for people who dismiss the UFO and ET phenomenon as nonsense. So he uses that exact terminology. So that really caught my attention. It's almost like they knew that I would watch that and they wanted to give me a confirmation. But so I've had many of these several of these experiences. Really, they really started to escalate. I must say, after I went on this ayahuasca retreat, and this really opened me up, and I started having sort of these lucid out of body experiences. And during one of them, I was on this in okay, I gotta have a like sort of a disclosure. So I fully am aware that the majority of the world's population will think this is wild or crazy. I don't care. And also, some people get sort of territorial about, sort of ET contact, or they start questioning you. I'm not claiming to be like, an emissary or taking physical trips like around the solar system, but this is my experience, take it or leave it. So, and I've heard from many sources that a star family and ETs will first introduce themselves on a sort of a different plane of reality, um, uh, in order before they actually contact you in a more physical sense, and this can include dreams. Can include on the astral planes and whatnot. So, but I did have this out of body experience where I was in this field, and it was very visceral. It almost seemed like the feeling was I just had this experience, and I just like got dropped off there, but I couldn't remember really why or what happened beforehand. I found myself running, like almost like trying to catch up to these two beings in the distance. One was this male, and one was a female, and they were, both wearing jumpsuits. They were your stereotypical Nordics, I have to say, just like you read about in ufology. And I was saying to them, wait, like I caught myself, and I was asking them, I don't know why I was asking this, but I was asking, how many of you are still on Earth? And I'm not sure why I was asking that again. Might I might have, now that I look at it from this perspective, I might have been referring to a colony that they had on Earth, perhaps the Paradise Colony in California that was supposedly a colony of uh, beings from Alpha Centauri.
Yeah,
But
Centaurians. Yeah.
yeah, but I'll tell you later why I think that is. But I sort of pop back into my body, and I hear this. Well, first of all, I get these numbers in my head, like in answer to my question. I think it was 43 just popped into my head. Something 42 or 43. And I literally hear, so I've had telepathy before, telepathic experiences. And, oftentimes it's difficult to distinguish what's your mental voice and what's like, where is it coming from? But
Right.
this was an actual man's voice, like a transmission. And they were basically telling me that, so this was maybe a couple years ago. And they were basically telling me, I don't know I forget the exact words, but that they were coming to, assist humanity. It sounded like almost they were going to integrate, saying like it's going to be perhaps a minute this transmission went on just inside my head. It's going to be good for, our society and our governments are going to, change. He went out, he said something about karma coming up and being cleared, I think from past lifetimes. He also, at the very end, he emphasized two words to me, and those two words, and I'll never forget this, he emphasized divine protection. And I think, if we're on our starseed mission, for lack of a better word, we are all divinely protected through it.
Mhm.
I know you, Tyler, have experienced recently a series of seemingly miraculous events that helped you through a very challenging circumstance. So but this applies not only to me, but to really everyone. I think we are all protected by forces much greater than ourselves.
Right.
So this was not only a soul experience, this ended up being kind of the series of transmissions. There's this another, and also astral experiences, which with literally seeing them, seeing these Nordic beings. There's another transmission this time from a woman that came a little bit later, and that's when she told me we're from like what from Alpha Centauri, for Centauri, or what we would call Alpha Centauri. But there's been a whole bunch of I have a few written here. That's why I'm glancing over here. I don't, but there's been some messages pertaining to where we are at now.
Yeah.
So
So really quick. So you asked how many are left, and they said like 43, like of them individually.
that's a number that popped up into
Okay.
my head.
Yeah. I
Like,
just, yeah,
yeah,
just clarifying. No, and that's very, they probably are connected to the Paradise Fires and Centaurians and that story. Thanks for you to share, and we believe you. So you don't have,
thank you. Yeah. So there's another experience that happened shortly after that, shortly after I saw myself as a blue skinned female. You know, just another tidbit. Like I know, uh, like I've heard testimony from someone, and she's a African American female in this life, and she uh, goes on these shamanic journeys where she taps into what she terms her higher self, who is this classic Pleiadian looking male cycle. So interpret that as you will. But then I went on an astral journey after that, just floating through different places. And I was trying to contact during that. I was trying to initiate contact while I was out of body with my friends, but it wasn't working. And I've tried to do that many times, but it almost never works when you try to force it. But then at the very end, like I was sort of in this building like setting, and then I look up and the ceiling opens up, and I see this beautiful blue sky and this craft just
we've,
the Ukraine-Russia war started, so maybe timing has to do with it. But she had this vision of uh, this burning building. It was like a wartime scenario, and uh, again, it was scary at first, but then after a while, she and other people around her had this almost God realization, as she said, or uh, was inspired by God and began holding hands with the people around them and singing. And they said, like, oh, we could actually control the fire. And they were singing about loving God. And the fire was not harming them anymore because they uplifted their frequency. And then this voice came into her dreamscape. Like she said, it was like external. And it told her, like this male voice, you are being lied to. And then she asked, I'm being lied to? Like, who's being lied to? And then the voice said, humanity. Humanity is being lied to. And it was very clear about that. And that's what she told me. And so again, interpret that as you will, but I think that's pretty self-evident that humanity is being lied to.
yeah,
And I think the whole part about singing and holding hands and uplifting the consciousness, that I think we're really experiencing that now with the ending. We're going to be experiencing more international peace and the ending of these wars and have a leap in consciousness after a period of trial.
right.
But she was also visited by, oh, I also want to say, when I was looking at my journal yesterday where I wrote this down, she had that experience just one day after I had another transmission by these beings who told me that during that one they told me, yeah, they're from Alpha Centauri. So I'm like, are we being contacted by like this similar group? Well, she also had an experience where she was visited kind of in a lucid state by this she immediately knew it was a human looking ET. But according to her, she had this one had like more of a darker complexion. But she immediately knew that it was ET just from the energy. And unlike me, there was no trepidation. She walks right up to this human-looking ET, and she's like, "Oh, you're an alien, right?" And he's like, "Yes, like I am." And she's like, "So when are you coming? Like, when are you guys gonna come?" Uh, and again, they're already here, but she's more talking about, when I think when they're going to show themselves more openly. And they gave her a year. They said 2026. So, 2026. And again, I've personally experienced this friend, and she's had like um, visions of certain things happening, and then they transpire the next day. So that really caught my attention. So again, this goes into this theme of these beings. They want to they're going to show themselves openly. He also told her like we're waiting for the like something like alternate versions of yourselves to come online or something like that. I don't know the exact words,
Yeah.
but it's
Sounds awesome.
very interesting. And me and this same friend. So what was especially compelling, we were at dinner with some other friends who not as into these topics as we are. And during the dinner, we were telling them that about ETs and how we think they're already here and how we think that they're going to come. And this ended up being like a whole we ended up staying outside the restaurant in the parking lot just talking to them about this. And then me and this other friend, like an hour later, we found ourselves alone. Me and my good friend, we were just walking together at night, and we right after this conversation, keep that in mind. And then we both look up at the same time, and there's just light in the sky, this bright light that flashes and then zooms straight vertically upward and disappears. And that was unlike anything either of us have ever seen. So when something like that happens, the logical mind steps in. It's like, was that just like a shooting star? But like I've never, and neither has she, have ever experienced anything like that.
Wow.
Uh, I think and that was right after this conversation that we were having. We're a very high vibe state. I
Yeah.
think that was a physical confirmation. Just my personal
I
opinion.
I
Again,
would
I'm
agree.
very skeptical, but
I would agree. I mean,
no,
they're showing themselves too. I mean, all this contact and all these experiences you're having and these messages, I mean, it's inevitable that you're going to eventually see them in the sky at some point, or at least their craft or a light that represents them, to just to let
yes,
you know, you know.
yes, yeah, I agree. I think it's beyond coincidence that we're just having this conversation and telling them about this, and then this appears in the sky. It's almost like physically giving us confirmation that what we were experiencing is real. And it's more than just a dream. And there's a couple other short messages that I just want to share before we wrap up. So one of them a few years ago, this was like a few years ago now, and I found myself zooming out of my body. Sometimes this happens, and it's almost like I was going through the stars, and there was felt this being beside me, but I didn't get a good look at this being. But uh, then we stopped in the middle of space, and I got a message: humanity is at the cusp of awakening. So that was a couple years ago. Now, just a couple weeks ago, actually, literally 2 weeks ago, December 20th, 2024, I had another astral experience where I found myself out of body, and I was looking almost in this reflective mirror, and then this face of a woman appeared, and I was just staring at her for a few seconds, and she was just smiling at me, just smiling. I was trying to ask her, like, telepathically communicate with her, but she was just smiling. She was very beautiful. Uh, Long, curly, dark hair, sort of a thin face, very beautiful. I want to make it clear, if in case she's listening, not more beautiful than my wife, but beautiful nonetheless.
Good caveat there.
Yeah, but then I got so this was an int sometimes call it your higher self, call it your guides. They communicate with, I get a lot of images too. When you start opening up your higher energy centers, they communicate with images, pop into your mind. Even I've had full words just written into my mind before. But I got a lucid vision. This was a lucid vision of a bee. Um, and I was almost like flying along with this bee. And it was very lucid. Like as it was kind of like, and I think it was going to pollinate a flower, and it took me a second to realize that there was actually, because I was so enraptured in the vision, that there was actually a voice speaking in the background. I'm like, oh, there's actually a voice speaking to me, and it was a female voice. Maybe it was the same woman who I saw, but she told me like very the budding flower of humanity is beginning to blossom. So there was this sort of alliteration with this BBB or 222 if you decode it numerically, and also the bee, the insect, the bee. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Another interesting thing is when I first heard it, I'm like, it sounded like the budding, it sounded almost like she was saying like a cross between budding and building. Like she was almost enunciating it like building. I'm like, oh, she must, but that doesn't make sense. She must have been saying budding flower, but only earlier today did it click. Maybe that's a reference to the another uh, experience I have written actually right above this, in which I was talking about that burning building and humanity holding hands and ascending. So I think they wanted to emphasize that. Um, but so it was almost like I was given a metaphor of this bee pollinating a flower, and humanity is a flower, and the pollination is like the higher rays of consciousness, and the flower of humanity is blossoming. Humanity is at the cusp of awakening. All these, they were going to get contact with our cosmic family, even though contact, in my opinion, is an inner process. We're not really contacting beings out there. We're contacting those parts of us, those inner aspects, that might
Right.
not be human. But that's another story. But anyway, I do truly believe that we are on the cusp of awakening, and I never have I believed that more than right now. In this age we're living in, we're living in a very exciting time. I don't want to get too political, but I was a fan of RFK Jr., for example, when he was running and in his work, and I saw him speak last year, and I met him. Kind of a funny synchronicity is he lived when I was growing up. He lived in the area, and his kids during my short stint at Sunday school, he sent his kids at the same school, and everyone was, he's a great environmentalist who he was known to clean up the Hudson and win cases against huge corporations like Monsanto in court. But only when he started speaking about the what did did questioning it did he get sort of in trouble. Now there's all these ludicrous smear campaigns going on. But I'm happy that things seem to be going in a good direction with him being the new HHX secretary, and he's brought Dane Wingington on his podcast before to talk about chemtrails
Yeah.
and geoengineering and cleaning that up. He wants to ban the fluoride in our water. Like he wants to clean up all the processed stuff and the poisonous dyes in our food. Never mind the what's, and speaking of that, there's only one way he could write a book named The Real Anthony Fauci and not get sued, and that's because they know that he'd win in a court case because he has hundreds of scientific references of actual science,
Right.
not propaganda to back him up. But another very compelling thing is his his uncle and his father, possibly even his cousin, that's a whole other rabbit hole, were killed by were assassinated. And everyone talks about the JFK files being released. Kash Patel, he's talked about the JFK files, even the 9/11 files, which would be awesome if they're released, because that would crumble the whole control system. It would start a chain reaction, in my opinion, if those files are released. I
I
know our
think
good friend, sorry, just a shout out our good friend Lily Nova. She's talked about that happening. She's also, I forgot to mention this, but she also emphasized like a month ago, Alpha Centauri. She emphasized that. So that really caught my attention. But yeah, once I think it's inevitability, once that is released, never mind like the Epstein stuff, the whole elite rings, there's going to be people are going to question, there's going to be a whole shift in
The,
consciousness. And just to finish this thought, not only was his father, his uncle JFK assassinated, and the evidence is overwhelming. We back in high school, we our teacher was actually cool. We actually did a debate about whether it was a conspiracy or not, and we only had to use official sources, like government approved sources. But still, the evidence was so overwhelming that people on the other side were complaining that it was unfair, that there was something else going on, and his father as well, uh, RFK, he was kind of almost a forgotten president because he was running for president and he was assassinated. Yeah, that's not a coincidence. And the assassin, his name is Sirhan Sirhan. He claims, you can literally see videos of this, that he does not remember going out there and pulling the trigger. And to this day, you could read articles by this on mainstream sources like ABC. He and his lawyer claimed that he was hypno programmed to pull the trigger. They use that exact
oh yeah,
yeah.
terminology. He was
oh yeah.
hypno programmed. So we see actually stage magicians who could hypnotize a person with a trigger word, and they go up there, pull a trigger to a fake gun, go into another room, not remember anything. That's demonstrated by magicians. Imagine what the CIA and other three-letter agencies could do with their MK Ultra techniques. Just imagine. So that needs to come to the surface. That's a whole rabbit hole. We could get so deeply into all the other anomalies with these shootings, but I think once that comes out, there's going to be a shift in consciousness, and you know, I'm
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to, again, I don't want to go too deeply into politics, but uh, you know, they're calling, there's smear campaigns against RFK and Trump, and Trump isn't perfect. At first I wasn't really a fan of him, but it's kind of funny that they're calling him like, oh, he's a fascist Nazi dictator. Yeah, I don't know one fascist dictator who wants to dismantle the propaganda and censorship machine and encourage free speech, who wants to encourage government transparency. There's not one fascist dictator who in history who has ever supported that. And I just find it
Right.
kind of ironic given that, um, well, I don't want to delve like into division and dualistic thinking. I think it's imperative that we transcend that. But that the I think it's ironic that the other side, again, I want to kind of transcend. We have to unite, but for the purpose of this conversation, the other side encouraged everyone to be locked up in their households, given an experiment mandated an experimental injection, and for those who didn't, that they are labeled as untouchable and scapegoat as the main problem of society. I just think that's very ironic.
Yeah.
That's what's
Well,
Nazi-esque. That's
yeah.
that's what is fascist-esque. And I have family who in my dad's side, he's Greek Jewish, who were actually in the camps. And there was one family member in particular who was sorry, just one more thought. There was one family member in particular, my great great uncle. He was known as the first person. I actually watched this documentary and he was mentioned, and they were said he was the first person, is also in books, to kind of escape. As they said in the documentary, he escaped from the trains. hid in the forest, and he was the first one survivor to go back to Greece. And he was telling everyone, and they were saying they didn't believe him. That's what the people were saying, that they didn't believe him. They didn't believe that people were capable of such depravity, such evil. Well,
Mhm.
I think we're re-experiencing that karmic cycle, if you will, where people are shouting from the rooftops about what's really going on, what's really been happening, that we're in this sort of control system, and the people at the top of these corporations and governments and three-letter agencies might not have our best interests, but it's fallen on many deaf ears. Well, I think that's going to change very soon, and the
Yeah.
control system will ultimately crumble. It's
Yeah.
inevitable.
I
Yeah.
mean, everything you said is spot on. It's all happening. And thank you for sharing all those experiences. There was so much there we could have chimed in on, but you were just
There's
going. And so
a lot there.
yeah, there's,
Yeah, sorry about
yeah,
that.
No, no, it's all good stuff.
yeah, it's all relevant. So,
It's all relevant.
you made our jobs very easy. We don't even have any questions left for you. Um, and we've been going for quite some time now, so we are going to go ahead and wrap this up. But thank you. This was absolutely incredible, and thank you for sharing all that with us. And definitely, absolutely, we know it's happening, and right now more than ever, like we feel it. Like back in like 2018 or 2019 when we started this, we felt it then, but this time it's palpable. It's
Totally.
happening now, but we
Yeah.
felt it then, but really we didn't see it. Now we're seeing it. So,
It's like the
um,
floodgates are open now and
yeah,
it's like
yep,
like
yep.
it's
Yes,
like
exactly.
intense now.
So let
Yeah,
everybody
it's
know
palpable.
one more time where they can find you and buy your book and all that, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
Yeah, you could find me. Well, if you just want if anyone wants my email, I'll just give it away. It's msabbas, so msabbas 92 at gmail.com. It's also linked on my website. My website is nothingtodoubt.org. And you could go on there if you're more interested. As a contact page. If you're interested in my book, then there's a whole other interviews, reviews, awards that it's won. You could check it out. I'm just going to be real with you guys. If it sells in my contract, if it sells 2,000 copies and or more, then I automatically get a traditional like deal on my next book. So if anyone wants to help me out, it's available on Amazon on print, hardcover, and Kindle versions, the Kindle
Does it
being
does a Kindle
uh,
version does a Kindle version does that sale count
yeah,
towards?
yeah,
Okay,
it counts. Yeah.
cool.
So, yeah, that's the least expensive option. But yeah, for anyone who does read it, I hope they enjoy it. Again, it's called The Monarchs. They could Google it in my name and see a bunch of stuff pop up and read reviews. And just to tie up one more thing, I was told in a dream years ago, and it was almost metaphorical because I was talking on a phone and this voice was answering, and this voice told me like that I'm going to write eight books in my lifetime, and this is years ago. And the first will do pretty well, pretty at first, but there's going to be a lot of questions, and then the second one will come out. Well, I didn't really know what that meant at that time because I wasn't planning for this to be a trilogy, but now I'm planning for it to be a trilogy where the second one will answer those questions. So I do believe, that we're all have a higher purpose here, especially to those listening. If you're listening, the very virtue that you exist means that you're an indispensable part of creation. So just honor yourself and honor your purpose here. And if you follow that calling, follow your passion, then you will be divinely protected and divinely guided.
Right.
And
Yeah.
by the way, if anyone is also interested in the Aramis Creative Learning Center with myself and Sherry Div Band and many others, we do teach classes, some mostly to children, but some for adults too, like the remote viewing class I was mentioning earlier. They could go to aramiscreativelearning.com. So I also want to plug that real quick. We're currently on a holiday hiatus, but that's been also very rewarding personally in my mission here to teach some of these kids and also
Yeah, that's
so
great.
some adults as well. So
That's
yep,
great. Yeah.
thank you so much.
Of course, man. Thank you. This was incredible, and I encourage everybody to grab a copy of your book. And just from reading what I have so far, it's incredible. And it is one of those things where you don't want to put it down, and it has a flow to it. And you're a great writer, and you're definitely here on a mission. And these books are serving a much larger purpose, I believe, than just being
Yeah.
another book. And I truly believe that. So thank you again. Thank you so much for joining us. And Aaron, did you have any last words before we wrap up?
No, thank you so much, man. This was amazing. I can't wait to read your book. I'm super excited now. I'm probably gonna. I've started it. I'm only a few pages in though, so I'll pick it back up probably tonight. And everybody go buy his book. We're gonna have the link in the description below.
Hmm.
Go pick that up because it sounds amazing. And yeah,
Yeah, absolutely,
yeah.
man. Well, all right, we're going to wrap this up. Good night, everybody. We love you. We can't do this without you. And until next time, have a great evening. Later, Mark.
Thanks,
I
guys.
guess.
Bye.
Hello, and welcome to Conference Phone. If you know the name of the conference you'd like to attend, press 1.
Come on, come on.
Using your touch-tone keypad, please enter the first 3 letters of the conference title now. You've selected Secret Space Conference? If that is correct, press 1.
What?
You've selected Full Disclosure Now. If this is correct, press 1. Why don't you just tell me the name of the conference you'd like to attend?
Rebels of Disclosure.
To find the venue nearest you, please enter your 5-digit zip code now. Why don't you just tell me where you want to attend the conference?
Pierre Marquette Lodge and Conference Center.
Rebels of Disclosure is playing at the Pierre Marquette Lodge and Conference Center in Grafton, Illinois, May 12th through 15th, 2025.
Yeah, now I got you.
If you would like to purchase tickets, please visit journeytotruth.online now.